I understand the lawyers just finished.
Yes, they have completed the rebuttal here by the prosecution, and now this will go to the jury in the morning. They will come back and get to the deliberations here. Look, during the closes today, Shep, prosecutors called Kyle Rittenhouse a wannabe soldier who showed no remorse when he shot those three men, while the defense team painted him as a teenager, chased down, cornered, and attacked, fighting for his life that night.
I think it's no surprise.
Referring to the shootings as murder, reviewing testimony, and replaying videos from that night, prosecutors take their last turn with the jury.
There is no valid self-defense claim.
They say Kyle Rittenhouse provoked the violence by raising his weapon and pointing it at protesters the night he shot and killed two men and wounded a third.
When the defendant provokes the incident, he loses the right to self-defense.
The defense, relying heavily on video as well, says that Rittenhouse was chased down, ambushed, and had no choice but to use his weapon.
He was there, he was causing trouble, he was a rioter, and my client had to deal with him that night alone.
So, after 2 weeks that included Rittenhouse apparently breaking down on the witness stand.
Yeah, that's absolutely untrue. There's no.
Verbal sparring between the judge and prosecutors and dozens of hours of testimony. It's now the jury's turn to talk, with this small town and the nation anxiously waiting to hear what they have to say. And you can see live now a handful of protesters that have gathered outside of the courthouse here. We've seen the crowd grow throughout the evening, and Shep, it's likely to continue to grow as we get closer to a verdict here. And it could ultimately include about 500 National Guard troops that are on standby just outside the city right now.
Jay Gray, live at the courthouse. Thank you. Let's get legal analysis now from David Henderson, civil rights attorney, CNBC contributor. David, closing arguments today. Man, it was unconventional. What stood out for you?
Shep, that's an understatement. What stood out to me at first was I found myself thinking, these prosecutors that are arguing this case, where have they been throughout this entire trial? If they had argued this case to the jury, not argued, but presented the evidence to the jury the same way they initially argued it, I'd feel much better about the jury's deliberations right now. But the longer they talked, the less I felt that way. It became kind of a jumbled mess towards the end.
On both sides?
I would say on both sides, except that I think the prosecution started off well, Shep, and then they lost some momentum. I thought the defense was lost from the beginning. They really didn't make any good arguments today, aside from dog whistling to potential jurors who just don't like Black Lives Matter protests and are inclined to see everybody who is out there as a rioter or a looter.
The judge today admitted that the charges are confusing. He said that while they are correct in what they say, they are not clear. That's a quote. It was at times, as one who's covered trials for the better part of 30 years, it was confusing.
I think that's an understatement, Shep. I've seen hundreds of these charges. If this is not the most confusing one I've ever seen, it's up there. And initially, the judge seemed like he was saying the law was confusing, but then I listened to him and I thought through what he was saying. And I think he was legitimately confused about the difference between first-degree intentional homicide and second-degree intentional homicide in terms of what the jury has to decide. But you hit the nail on the head with what the big takeaway is. If the judge is confused, what does that say about the jurors who are going to have to deliberate over this case?
Will they begin that in the morning? What will you be watching for?
You know, Shep, what I'm going to be watching for more than anything else are questions the jury sends back into the courtroom that will give us some sense of what it is they're trying to clarify as they begin those deliberations. And also, there's just no way of determining how long this one's going to take. Normally, if you get a lightning fast reaction from the jury, that's in favor of the prosecution. But based on the way this charge was drafted, I expect these deliberations to last for a while.
David Henderson watching it all for us. Thank you, David, as always.